that man, longer than anybody else, has been my confidant and most loyal friend, and I will never be able to thank you enough, Jerry. My role here is not to thank Jerry, though. It's not to talk about Jerry's incredible accomplishments in the period beyond his football career, nor his contributions to Wofford, but to talk just a minute about Jerry Richardson's impact on Wofford football, primarily as a player. All those records are just facts, and the results of those facts, records, were wins. But those wins meant more than just one-loss records during that year, but because of when it was, it meant everything to Wofford football. Small college football was in jeopardy, and along comes, and Wofford trustees, very frankly, were considering dropping the sport when Conley Snoddo came here to give it a last chance. And it was during that time, with Conley Snoddo and Jim Brakefield, that the group of really talented young athletes who also were very good students came to Wofford in the early 50s. I see several of them, like Reddick and those in this field, as Sammy. This group of people began to reestablish the game, and by the mid-50s, we had the Bradshaw-Richardson era. And that's when Wofford really began to establish itself as a football school with high academic standards. And it was that legacy that I think many of us don't realize. Philip Covington, who some of you all remember was dean, he was a graduate of Emory, had no football background. And he told me this story himself, Jerry, and I don't know, you've probably never heard it. But Philip told me that Wofford had worn out the Citadel 34-0, and General Mark Clark was very upset about it. And he had done everything but ordered a victory and had brought an entourage to the game, and Philip was sent down to the game in order to be the emissary. And at that day, there was a lot of ceremony. The presidents met at midfield at the half and all of this sort of stuff. And there was a trophy that went to the winning team. Well, Philip was he was the dean, he wasn't the president, but he'd been given the assignment to go, and he went to the game, didn't know much about it. And he told me that Wofford was behind, and he had already begun to prepare to take the trophy. And he asked where the trophy was. And he said, well, Dean Covington, you were supposed to have brought the trophy. Philip said, Joe, I never cared one whit whether anybody caught any ball anywhere, but it became the center of my life. And he said, from that point on, I loved Jerry Richardson because he caught enough of them. So I went back and told people that I had so much confidence that we were going to win that I didn't even bring the trophy. Jerry had won the administration. And then George Johnson and I had a mentor named Lewis Jones, who was a great guy, and who told me that George was going to do great things for the community, and he sure has. But he told me something that was really important. I had come to Spartanburg, and of course I knew Jerry. You know, when I was in diapers, Jerry was a hero, you know. I told Richard that when he said, do this. Richard said, yeah, you were still wet in the bed when you went in the Army, weren't you? But I didn't know Jerry, but he had fixed me a hamburger over on Kennedy Street. And Lewis said, you know, I asked him about Jerry, and here's something he said. He said, well, he's the hardest working guy you want to know. But then he said something that I can nearly quote directly, but I'm not absolutely sure it's the exact word. He said, if you get to know him, you'll find out that he has incredible amount of common sense. And he said, his integrity is at his core. That's a Lewis Jones quote. His integrity is at his core. And if he tells you something, that's the way it is. He said it may not be right, but it's what he believes. Jerry had helped win the faculty for football during that time, and I can tell you, a college like this, football program grows from the inside out, not from the outside in. And with the administration and faculty and trustees and support, it was then possible to develop Terrier Club support outside, which wound up being the lifeblood of this football program and a great contributor to the future of this college. Jerry, your field work did it, but your person made it really important. Number 51, I salute you. You're Mr. Wofford as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
From the annals of myth and legend, we can learn a lot about giants, but I don't recall ever having read whether giants have a sense of humor. We think of them as being powerful and ponderous, but do they laugh? Do they make others laugh? I met Jerry Richardson in person only about a dozen years ago. I knew, of course, the legend of Jerry Richardson, but I'd never seen him up close. And one day, as I was about to leave my office and go to an adjacent classroom, I discovered there was a hulking figure with a somewhat menacing expression on his face blocking the doorway. And I quickly calculated the odds that if necessary I could dart past him to safety, and I realized the odds were against me. So I waited, and this figure said, "Who are you?" And I decided to sort of ramp up, and I said, "I'm Bernie Dunlap." And he said, "And what are you going to do next?" And I said, "Well, I'm Bernie Dunlap, and I'm going to go next door, and I'm going to teach a class." "Who are you, may I ask?" And he looked down at me, and he said, "I'm Jerry Richardson." Well, I immediately thought, Jerry Richardson, I know who that is. That's Mr. Richardson, the Richardson Building, the athletic program. We need all kinds of new things at Wofford. I know my job here. I said, "Oh, Mr. Richardson, it is certainly a pleasure to meet you." He was not deflected by my courtesy. He said, "You mind if I sit in on your class?" And I said, well, actually, Mr. Richardson, I'm teaching Dante's Divine Comedy. It's the last lecture that I'm devoting to that point. And he said, "I'd like to sit in if you don't mind." And I said, "No, that would be fine." So I went into the class, and there was quite a stir when Jerry Richardson entered and took a seat. I started talking about Dante, and I got really cranked. And after a while, I forgot he was there. And I was going on about how this was the greatest single act of the human imagination. And at the end of class, I was virtually exhausted from my effort. And Jerry stepped up to me and he said, "You always get that excited when you lecture." And we talked about this and that. And after a while, he said, "You ever been in an NFL dressing room on game day?" And I said, "No, Mr. Richardson, I can't say that I have." He said, "It's very tense, very tense." And I said, "Well, I imagine it is." He said, "We have breakfast, and everybody's staying at a downtown hotel so they don't get distracted. And after breakfast, we have a team meeting, and that's where I have somebody who speaks to the players, but this year they just have not brought home the bacon." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, we've got good players. We had good players last year, but last year I screwed up. And I said, oh, I don't know, Mr. Richardson, you had problems at quarterback. I don't. He said, no. He said, I think the problem is that the inspirational speaker that we have on game day just has not been up to what was needed. And that's what I want you for. And I said, oh, Mr. Richardson, I don't think the professors' union will let me do that. He said, think about it. And I was thinking about it real hard. I was trying to figure how I was going to get out of this, and I knew somehow Joe Lassane was behind it. When I ran into Joe, I said, Joe, I got the strangest offer. He said, I hope you're going to do this. This will be real good for Wofford. And that day I got a note. It was the first note I ever got from Jerry Richardson. If you ever receive one, it said, Bernie, 1, and the number was circled. Thank you for having lunch yesterday. 2, thank you for agreeing to speak to the Carolina Panthers. 3, the team chaplain will be in touch with you. Well, the chaplain did call me, and he gave me the good news, which was that I could choose the game at which I would address the team, and I was no fool. I decided to pick the weakest opponent on the schedule, and that was the St. Louis Rams at the time. I was introduced by the chaplain, and I looked out, and I realized I was hopelessly unequipped for the task before me. But I began to improvise, and I said, men, let me ask you a serious question. Do you think God, the Father Almighty, creator of the universe, cares any more for the outcome of a Sunday afternoon NFL football game than he does, say, for the fall of a random sparrow? And I saw the big man I'd ridden up on the elevator with turn to the guy sitting next to him and say, what the hell is this? And I immediately, in mid-sentence, began to revise. I said, on the other hand, do you think God the Father Almighty cares if you're playing and you're dispirited and down and you're playing a lousy game and you're behind by 13 points going deep into the 4th quarter? Do you think he cares if when the enemy throws a long pass and your defensive back strains an extra inch and just barely manages to tip the ball but catches it as it falls before it hits the ground and runs it in for a touchdown? Do you think he cares if on the ensuing kickoff you recover a fumble and as the last seconds of the game tick away you push across for the winning touchdown? You bet your sweet ass he does! They were on their feet cheering. I had a meeting out of the palm of my hands. I thought, I got a career here. And I'm here to tell you that they took the field and played the lousiest game of the season. I talked to somebody who has known Jerry for far, far longer than I have. And I said, if you had to describe Jerry Richardson in just a couple of words, what would they be? And he said, number 1, little circle around it. Number 1, he's a worker. When he had a fast food franchise, you were as likely to find him at the griddle showing cooks how to flip a burger as you were to find him in the boardroom. He's never been afraid of work, and he set an example for everybody who works for him and with him. 2, he's a winner. He wins because he never quits trying. He wins because nothing but his best will be enough. And he expects that of others, and he inspires others to do their best. 3, he's a gentleman. He is a gentleman in every sense of the word. He never deliberately makes someone else uncomfortable in a situation in which the fact that he is Jerry Richardson might intimidate them, might make them feel less than they are. He is a worker. He is a winner. He is a gentleman. Ladies and gentlemen, Jerry Richardson. Harold, will you join me to present the retired jersey?
Bernie, we are 9 minutes late. You have eaten in all of the wonderful things I was going to say today, but I enjoy them. Bernie, we're saving you, and you're going to ride in on the coattails of Cam Newton to speak to our team when we go to the Super Bowl. The nicest honor you can bestow on an athlete is to retire their number. And all I need to say, and all I know to say, is thank you. To President Dunlap, Hugh Lane, the trustees, Richard Johnson in the athletic department and the administrative staff, and especially to Coach Bob Pravat for taking his time and his expense to drive me to Wofford, which was a 200-mile one-way trip, so that I could have a workout for Coach Snido, who would award me a 1/4 football scholarship, which we gratefully accepted. We were fortunate to have grown up with nice people. Wofford was and is still made up of nice people. In addition, for some reason, our life has been blessed with good luck. It was good luck Charlie Bradshaw transferred to Wofford in 1956. It was good luck he and I stayed mostly healthy for 2 years before he re-injured his knee, missing most of my senior season. I do remember the first game of our senior season. I returned the opening kickoff to the 35-yard line, and on the first play from scrimmage, Charlie threw me a 65-yard touchdown pass. Because of his knee injury, he started missing games shortly after that. Over the years, I have wondered what we may have done if he had been injury-free. However, his not playing did not lessen the abuse of all of our opponents dished out to me. As I played wide receiver, safety, return punts, kickoffs, I also kicked field goals, extra points, plus they knew I had already been drafted by the Baltimore Colts as a junior, and they wanted to let me know, in their eyes, I was no big shot. But the single best thing about Wofford College was a trip I took to Pawleys Island, and I was hitchhiking from the south end of Pawleys to the north end of Pawleys. And a friend of ours, Bunny Shipman, picked us up, and I sat in the back seat of the car. With Bunny was her friend. I asked Bunny, "Who is that cute girl sitting on the dashboard of your car?" There were 3 people in the front seat, and I was one of 3 in the back. She said, "Rosalind Salinger." Well, Rosalind was a smiling, knockout beauty. We have since traced that 1.8 miles. I had to develop a plan to get a date with her. Obviously, I developed a successful plan because she's been my wife for over 50 years, and she's here today, and in my eyes, she's still a knockout beauty. When we got our NFL team in 1993, there was no doubt we were going to have our summer training camp at Wofford if they could provide the physical facilities needed. Thanks to many people, and thanks to many people led by Joe Lassane and Danny Morrison, they and many more. See what you're doing to me? She said she was sorry. Thanks to Joe Lassane and Danny Morrison, they and many more performed a miracle to provide what we required. It was a chance for us to give back to Wofford and Spartanburg. But more importantly, it was a chance for our Carolina Panthers organization to be exposed to the nice, unique culture of Wofford. For us, our family, Wofford, nice people, good luck, and hard work have made our dreams true beyond any stretch of our imagination. Thank each of you for taking your time to be with us this morning, and thank all of you who worked so hard to make this a nice day for us. Bernie, that took 6 minutes and one hell of a lot of pain.